Welcome everybody to Buddhist Center. Happy Saka Dawa. What a wonderful occasion. We're able to celebrate Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana. And what an incredible occasion. And we're told that on occasions such as this, the Buddha said that when we honor or commemorate, special dates, of holy bodhisattvas and so forth, those specific commemorative days have a special power. And our relationship with them and that special kind of power of basis makes it so we generate and multiply our virtue. It's said different ways, different times. Rinpoche always said 100,000 times. And then others will say 1,000,000 times. Others will say 10 million times. But we know it's an opportunity, what is called a time of increase. That we know for sure, because there's a broadcast failed on the Facebook. And that's because we have this opportunity of increase, meaning that on these days, when we engage in virtuous actions, sorry, I got distracted. When we engage in virtuous actions, those virtues that we engage in increase 100,000 or 1,000,000 or 10 million times, but more than 1 or 2 times. It's quite a bit. It's quite an enormous amount of increase. So it's said that we should do practices on these holy days and emphasize them because of the fact of the amount of merit that we are able to accumulate. We get so much incredible amount of benefit. It's just amazing. So today, while we commemorate, the historical story that Buddha came in this world and was born and then passed away, and achieved nirvana and then passed away. As we really celebrate this, let's remember how kind Buddha Shakyamuni truly was, and that Buddha Shakyamuni was already a Buddha when we look at the Mahayana scope, and that the Buddha only appeared in this world out of great, perfect love and compassion for all sentient beings, to show each and every sentient being through a display of activities exactly how to achieve the goal that he had already achieved, the freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So we're so blessed to live in a time and live in a world where Buddha's teachings are still present. We have the karma to be able to hear these teachings. And during all times of all time, there won't always be this opportunity for us to have the karma. We haven't always had this opportunity to meet with the Buddha's teachings because of various throwing and completing karmas that we've experienced in our lives. But the bottom line is that right now, we are in contact with Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, and Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings go over a wide range of aspects, and there's a wide varieties of pronouncement that Buddha gave because of the varieties of sentient beings. And we know that the Buddha taught to scope. But what's amazing is that the highest scope and the beginning scope that Buddha taught is all right in front of us for us to practice. And we know, according to Lord Atisha and Tsongkhapa and all the great masters, that it's a graduated stages of the path that we have to go through, just like Buddha Shakyamuni did, to be able to achieve that realization that Buddha Shakyamuni came to the world to tell us about. And that realization is that we don't ever have to suffer again, and that we can have complete bliss and dependence upon specific stages of the path, and that if we do them in that specific order, as presented by Buddha Shakyamuni, the Holy Nalanda Pandits, and those great commentaries written by the Tibetans, if we follow those instructions, we are going to achieve that goal. It's not like buying a lottery ticket and then hoping that that's the one. It's a definite goal of perfect happiness, perfect bliss, perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means that will be achieved, better than winning the lottery if we put the work in. It won't be achieved for us. Buddha can't give it to us. Nobody can sit in a room. No special lama is going to wave around. I can't wave around my hands because Rinpoche waved around his hands. And then now, somehow or another, everybody listening is going to be freed from suffering, or I'll throw some water at the screen and you'll all be freed from suffering, and I don't really have big realizations to transfer you to you. So no one's in danger of that happening. But even if the Buddha was in this room right now, The Buddha couldn't transfer anything to you. Only thing the Buddha could do is teach you exactly how to become enlightened. And that's what the Buddha did. Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world out of great love and compassion for all sentient beings and taught all of us how to achieve a state of fearlessness and bliss. And that path that he taught is a path that's exactly correct and is established by valid cognition, and not only a valid cognition, a direct valid cognition. And that direct valid cognition is incontrovertible and is correct. And the way that we apprehend reality, the way that we see things, the way that we cherish ourselves more than others, the way that we grasp at the I as being inherently existent, being truly established, as incorrect, does not tally with reality. And this is why we suffer. So the Buddha came to the world to show us how to make our beings, how to make our minds start to tally with the things, to be in line with the way that things actually are, be in line, have our actions, because we know that the Buddha stated that all phenomena arise from causes. We know the causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of causes as well are taught by the great seer. So we know that there is some sort of thing that has to be created. There's some sort of cause and effect relationship between everything that we're going to experience. And we know that if we want to create the position that the Buddha has put him or herself in, which is a freedom from all of suffering and a state of infinite happiness, then we have to create the causes that create that phenomena, that create that position. We have to make our mind have a mind that dependently originates into perfection and bliss and compassion, and only goes from bliss, perfection, bliss to bliss to bliss, perfection to perfection to perfection, perfect compassion to perfect compassion, because it dependently originates. There are only causes in that continuum for that state of mind. And that state of mind, once you achieve the state that Buddha Shakyamuni achieved, will never be different in terms of that freedom and that bliss and that reliability, because there will no longer be the causes that give rise to the phenomena, which is called suffering, the phenomena, which is called a blissless state. You will only have the causes for the phenomena, which are bliss, the causes for the phenomena, which is a state of being freedom from suffering. So this is how we evolve. We evolve through depending upon the same causes that the Buddha involved himself with and herself with when we look at other Buddhas than Buddha Shakyamuni. But today we're commemorating Buddha Shakyamuni. So we say himself with. Can you plug my phone in? So we have to involve in the same causes that Buddha Shakyamuni involved himself with if we want to have the same exact result. And when we look at the Four Noble Truths, which is the first teaching that the Buddha gave in Varanasi, India, in Sarnath, we see that the Buddha first taught us about these relationships between cause and effect, and our mind's reaction to phenomena, and how that created our whole world of samsara. So the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, this is the superior truth of origin, this is the superior truth of cessation, and this is the superior truth of path. And this is the first being that had presented this information in the world where we could, find it, written down, where we, could find information. The Buddha didn't write it down, but his students did. This is the first time that information was in the world that showed exactly how suffering occurred and exactly how freedom from suffering could be produced. And then when we look at it from the Mahayana perspective, exactly how complete perfection can be created, the completely enlightened state of the Buddha. So before we go any further, I wanted to, talk a little bit about Buddha Shakyamuni. We know Buddha Shakyamuni turned the wheel of Dharma 3 times, these immaculate turnings where we find the Four Noble Truths presented in Varanasi, India, at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. The second turning of the wheel of Dharma, we find the teaching on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Heart Sutra, in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where Buddha taught that incredible ultimate truth the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. And then the third turning of the wheel of Dharma and Vaishali, where 10 bodhisattvas, 10th level bodhisattvas, got up and asked the Buddha various questions. And one of the very famous questions that Bodhisattva Pramata Samugata asked the Buddha, he said that first turning of the wheel of Dharma, you said that the Four Noble Truths were truly existent. Second turning of the wheel of Dharma, you said that no phenomena are truly existent. There seems to be some sort of contradiction here. Could you explain this to those of us who are confused? And the Bodhisattva Pramata was speaking on behalf of those who were inclined towards the mind-only school. And the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha actually taught the mind-only school. And this is why, from a Madhyamika Prasangika point of view, we look at that as an interpretable teaching, and the first turning of the wheel of Dharma as an interpretable teaching, because the Buddha said things that have to be interpreted according to the tenet or final view of the individual practitioner, because the Buddha taught to everyone. The Buddha knew that everybody had a little bit of a different capacity, so the Buddha taught to everyone. And this is the great kindness of Buddha Shakyamuni. This is what omniscience can do. Omniscience can bring a varieties of information and hand them out to varieties of individuals. And all of that information, when you have omniscience and you have great love and compassion, will help to drive each of those individual beings towards the same exact goal. And that's what's amazing, how you can tell all these different beings, different things, because you know that at their scope, that's what they will need to hear in order to evolve to the next kind of tenet, in order to evolve to the next kind of level of realization that they will be able to, in dependence upon the staircase of realizations that occur according to the Buddha. So before we go further, as I said, let's get into the 7-point Vairakana posture that we get into quite a bit around here at Buddhist Center before class. I've gone over it many times, so I won't go over it today. And this is the way that we can get our minds, according to the great masters, into the most kind of clear place. And why does our body have anything to do with it? Our body, we know, if we're in meditation and we're being bit by a mosquito, you'll know that's going to distract your meditation. So you know your body has some sort of connection to your mind. It's not that you're trying to then make your tactile consciousness, start to evolve. It will evolve in terms of purification because your mind evolves, but it's your mental consciousness that you're trying to actually evolve. So we need all the support that we can get for that. So we don't want our body to be distracting, like if a mosquito is biting us. And if we're not in the most conducive state in terms of posture, our body can start to hurt in a certain place, or our winds and our channels won't be aligned completely. Our blood won't flow completely the best way, and our feet will start to go to sleep, or our arm will start to hurt in a certain way. And all of these things will become distracting to our meditation. And at the kind of Vajrayana level, we know that the subtle mind rides on this subtle wind, and that's how we can experience this feeling and know that we're touching. So the mind goes here to my toenail, the tip of my head, and there's all mind. There's sense mind, and then there's mental. The sensory, eye consciousness, and then there's the ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tactile consciousness, tongue consciousness, and then there's the mental consciousness. And that all those 5 sense consciousness really influence our mind, right? They really influence how our mind is working. So therefore, the great masters who have meditated and meditated and meditated have told us that this 7-point Vairakana posture is really conducive, once you get used to doing it, to staying like that for a long period of time, and it allowing for everything to flow exactly like it needs to flow, so that your mental consciousness can be involved in what you're telling it to do. And your mental consciousness will be able to do what you tell it to do, because all of these other things won't be a hindrance. They'll be a support. So I think it's important sometimes to explain why we're doing things. It's not just because this is a Buddhist posture. We see Buddhas sitting like this, so we should sit like this. No, there's a purpose for everything that we do. And if you don't know the purpose for everything that you're doing, sooner or later, it'll just seem silly. And it won't connect with you, and you won't really do it. So try to understand what you're doing with these things, how they affect you, how they will help you develop, and you'll see the significance of it, and it'll make you kind of try to get into a posture that's kind of unfamiliar, and maybe try to move closer to being able to get pretzel legs, a full Vajra posture or half Vajra posture, just cross-legged. When you're younger, you have a lot better chance at that. As you get older, in my position and others who I know are listening, the Vajra posture becomes more and more unreasonable. But if you can do it, the more you can do to support, the more, think about how much easier it would be to get into exercising, exercise and stretch well, than to make your mind work right all the time. So like the Buddha said, when the Vinaya was taught about ethical behavior, the Buddha talked about, refraining from, negative speech and negative, actions of the body, because that's really all you could tell whether someone was doing or not, So for the monastics, you couldn't tell what they were really thinking. But the Buddha also knew that last thing to be able to subdue, it's easier, as we've heard great masters say, what's easier to refrain from? When we look at in terms of non-virtue, and we look at the 10 non-virtues of the body, non-virtues of the speech, and non-virtues of the mind, we look at what is it easier to refrain from? Someone's in front of you and makes you angry, in a polite society. Is it easier for you to refrain from punching them in the face or yelling at them? Well, obviously, it's easier for you to stop the physicality. Now, is it easier for you then to, not yell at them, or for you to not think badly about what they've just said? Well, then it's easier not to start screaming at them. But the mind, thinking, this jerk, I really should just at the top of my line, I'm not going to do it. And sometimes I'm not going to do it because there'll be consequences societally. If there were no consequences, I'd probably just do it. But we see that when we start to track back physical and then verbal and mental, we see that the mind is the kind of driver that's going to make me shout, that's going to make me hit. And if I can somehow fix that thing, then these things just won't happen altogether. But if I can refrain from these things, the hitting and the yelling, it's going to have an influence on my mind's ability, because there won't be that regret and that why did I, and that and anger. It won't be influenced in that same way, because it won't be exaggerated and brought to that next level by being influenced by physicality. Just think about it. Think about how much more elevated your mind gets if you punched. How much more elevated your mind gets if you yell. Now the exaggeration in your mind, somehow, because some physicality happened, is now charged. You feel the blood. You feel it. You almost feel it when you get angry, pulsing in you. And you feel your mind boiling almost. You feel the physical connection. So now we're trying to kind of reverse it. Now we're trying to kind of know that that is true. Know that this is true, because we just went through an analysis and know that something is really connected there. And then figure out what the masters say we need to do to put our bodies into a place. We're obviously in our mouths, because that has to do with talking. So the 7-point Vairocana posture has our mouths very conveniently with our tongue on the top. It almost tells our mind, no talking. Our body's in a posture. So there's a lot going on when we look at why Buddha, why Kamalashila, why Pabunka Rinpoche, why Tsongkhapa said, sit like this. It was to really help us to be able to become Buddhas. Why are we sitting like this? To become Buddhas. Why are we breathing out and counting the breath to become Buddhas? Why are we visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni? Because that's the reliable guide that we want to become. And the Buddha needed to get shamatha and rely upon an object of observation to get shamatha, just like we will. And why not use an object of observation that will allow us to gain merit at the same time and stamp in our minds that this is the being we will become, to remind us we have Buddha nature? Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we remind ourselves subtly while we're single-pointedly visualizing something that we're going to become a Buddha somewhere in there? That the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience are adventitious. These are defilements that can be removed. Our mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. The Buddha we have as our object of observation is just like a poster on the wall of our future in terms of our future realizations. That Buddha we're visualizing, with Buddha we go for refuge to, is just we're going for refuge to that being who knows how to tell us what to practice so that we're an object of refuge. So we're connecting in that way, not in a hierarchy of realization, sure, but not in terms of a being like a God out there that we can't become, a being who came to show us how to become exactly like he did. And that's what's so amazing. So when all of these instructions that the Buddha gave, when Atisha says these are all instructions for practice, that isn't just something neat we know about the Lam Rim so we don't think anything Buddha said is bad. No, everything that I talk about every week, everything Khenser Geshe Wandak talked about, every sentence that is said can be an instruction for practice. Right now, I said it's an instruction for practice. That's an instruction for practice, that all teachings are an instruction for practice. There isn't anything when you start to really study the Lam Rim and study Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, brought down through the Nalanda Pandits, brought down through these incredibly holy Tibetan masters. You really see that. You see the instruction in all of it. And when you don't see the instruction, and at Shravasti Abbey, they do this really great thing where they look at the nuns' vows and the monks' vows, and they say, why would the Buddha have said this? What does this have to do with attachment, hatred, ignorance? How does this harm a sentient being? What is this? Why am I refraining from this action right here? Not because, why is it because it's a rule? Why is it a rule? We're not just blindly following things because people tell you to do something. We're doing things to evolve into perfect beings. Why would the Buddha tell us to do this? It's always a reason. It isn't always for no reason. The Buddha's omniscient. The Buddha never, ever wasted words. That's one thing we can know for sure. The Buddha didn't waste words. The Buddha knew exactly what to say at every moment when he said it. And that's the being we're celebrating today. Buddha Shakyamuni, who came to this world out of great love and compassion and knew exactly what to say, exactly when to say it, and exactly who to say it to. And here we are almost 2,600 years later, and this same formula works. And the same formula works because we have the same components that Buddha Shakyamuni started with, a mental consciousness that is not sullied. We have stains just like Buddha Shakyamuni did. Those stains are adventitious. Those stains are added. Those stains are not necessary. Our mental consciousness is not in that nature. Our mental consciousness, our mind is merely clear in knowing, and it can know everything. It just has to be able to. We have to make it able to. We can love everyone. Our mind just has to dependently originate into that feeling of love and compassion, that state of mind of love and compassion, that state of non-harm, that mental factor of non-harm, that beautiful mind that a bodhisattva has, that is a main mind, that day and night just wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. We're so fortunate these teachings are all in our world now, that we can figure out how to end our suffering and end the suffering of everyone we love forever. And we don't just believe this because Buddha taught it. As Geshe Pendela just said a couple of weeks ago, we take this information and we do research. We do experiments on ourselves. We experiment on our mind. We look at other commentaries. We look at other, points. We try to get it more subtle and subtler. We research it. We analyze it. And once we get to the point where we have this true understanding about an object of observation that's actually correct, then we can make it who we are. We can have that wisdom arisen from meditation. And we all will. And everyone's here today. It's so auspicious. I think it's just so incredible. So before we just start our little meditation that we're going to do just for a short period of time, just to connect with each other, connect with meditation, connect with a space in our mind that isn't loud or that isn't sleepy. I'm going to recite the mantra for increasing merit. So this is supposed to increase merit 100,000 times. I figure, I like math. So today's the day of increase. So I don't know what that does mathematically, but I figured we need all the help we could get with accumulation of merit and purification. So I'll recite the mantra for increasing merit 3 times. Om Sambara Sambara Bemanazara Mahazoa Hom. Om Mara Mara Bemanagara Mahazoa Hom. Om Sambara Sambara Bemanazara Mahazoa Hom. Om Mara Mara Bemanagara Mahazoa Hom. Om Sambara Sambara Bemanazara Mahazoa Hom. Om Mara Mara Bemanagara Mahazoa Hom. Now in the 7-point Vairocana posture, let's just begin breathing in and out and counting, and imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation, arm length away, about the size of our thumb, beautiful and radiant and fixed. When we look at meditation, there are 2 kinds of meditation: analytical meditation and fixed meditation. Here we're doing fixed meditation, and in fixed meditation, you tell your mind exactly what to do, exactly what to focus on, and you don't allow it to stray from any other objects. You don't analyze anything about it. You're just, in this case, going to breathe in, breathe out, count that breath, and imagine Buddha Shakyamuni. If your mind strays to another place, even if it's virtuous, that's not what you told your mind to do. Don't let it do that. Let mindfulness bring that back. If your mind starts to get sleepy and dull, don't let that happen. That's not what you told your mind to do. Let mindfulness bring it back to the place where you remember that the focal object is breathing in and out in the counting and Buddha Shakyamuni. So let's engage in that practice for a moment. And then we will go from there. And thank you so much for gathering with me today on this holy day of the celebration of Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana, and a celebration of this incredible, reliable guide that came into our world and showed us exactly how to be free. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni goes into an animated form. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is so pleased and so happy that we're here today, that we're doing exactly what he intended for us to do. It's so rare that sentient beings engage in practices that will allow them to achieve the state of Buddhahood. And imagine how pleased Buddha Shakyamuni would be with us to see us here today, engaging in the practices that he came into the world to show us. Now imagine that from the bliss that Buddha Shakyamuni is experiencing, there's an eruption that happens. And now the entire merit field is in the space in front of you. Imagine that all the holy gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are there. Imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama seated on a very secure throne, supported by 8 snow lions, going nowhere, staying in this world, continuing us to bless us with these incredible teachings. Imagining Khensa Geshe Wandak. We're all so connected to him. We're so fortunate that he spent decades teaching us the truth, showing us exactly how to become Buddhas. He'd be so pleased that we're here today on Saka Dawa, looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, revering Buddha Shakyamuni, paying homage to that great master, that because Buddha Shakyamuni came into this world, beings like Khenser Geshe Wandak are produced. We will be able to have these same realizations that Khenser Geshe Wandak had, and that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has, and that Buddha Shakyamuni had, by relying upon the pathway that Buddha Shakyamuni taught. And we're so fortunate that we have had these perfect teachers, and we have these perfect teachers in our world. We have these perfect causes and conditions to be able to evolve. Imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo, imagining Khenser Gen Yatso, imagining Dema Locho Rinpoche, imagining Lama Zopa Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, imagining Umzala Geshe Aga, imagining Anila Tupten Chodron and Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, imagining Jeffrey Hopkins, all these holy beings like Chado Rinpoche, who are so kind to us to come into our world and share with us the Dharma. We're so fortunate that Geshe Dorje Damdu and Umzala Geshe Aga are still continuing to guide us. Jeffrey Hopkins is still continuing to guide us. We're so fortunate the Dalai Lama continues to guide us. Remember this on this day, that the Buddha isn't with us, but the Buddha is in a way, because the lineage is here, that pure lineage is here. And we require our teachers to be able to be touched by it, to be able to be blessed by it. Now imagine all the holy beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Guna Prabha and Shakya Prabha, and imagining Lama Sarlimpa and Atisha, all these holy beings in the space in front of you, the extensive deeds lineage that we're so connected to. Imagine the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Chandrashita and Baba Vega and Kamala Shila. And again, imagining Lama Sarlimpa and Atisha. We're so blessed to have even heard the names of these holy beings, let alone have practiced the teachings that they have taught. We're so connected to these beings by Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and by Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, because we know that all of these teachings, all of these pathways, all of these lineages were integrated. And Lord Atisha showed us how no teachings are contradictory and how they were all instructions for practice. Imagining the holy lineage of blessings passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Saraha and Matripa and Tilopa and Naropa, and imagining Lotsawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa, all these holy beings that helped us to understand and help us to understand the nature of our mind, the emptiness of our mind. Imagining Lama Atisha teaching Drone Tompa, passing down the holy lineage of all of the Lam Rim. Drone Tompa was a layperson. We have to really have some confidence in this and say that we can do this too. Even if we aren't ordained, we can engage in the stages of the path to enlightenment and achieve realizations just like Drone Tompa. Imagine Drone Tompa is there, and all of the old Kadampa lineages, those three holy lineages with their varying degrees of explanation. Imagining all of the holy beings of the Nyingma lineages, such as Padmasambhava, the Sakya lineage, Sakya Pandita, and the Satya Kunga Nyingpo, and the Kaju lineages, the Karmapas, and the Galupa lineages, Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtap J and Joseph J. Imagining all of the beings in that holy lineages, such as Basu Chuji Jetson, Panchen Sanandrapa, Jayan Sheba, Janja Rupi Georgi, Gonju Jimmy Wampo, imagining 7th Dalai Lama, all these holy beings. We're so connected to them. Now imagine the highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, action Tantra deities, all the 35 Buddhas, all the protector deities. All these holy beings are in the space in front of us. We're connected to them. They protect us. They make sure. And when we think of protection, we don't always understand what protection means. They protect our minds. They help us. They emanate. They show us how to become more evolved. And this is the true protection that we need. We need protection forever against the self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude. And these are what these beings do for us. They protect us in that way. Now imagine that you, because you recognize that you want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, bring all sentient beings here to be able to hear exactly what they need to hear to be able to evolve into that state of perfection. because all sentient beings will become a Buddha, and all sentient beings will become a Buddha in dependence upon this same information, on dependence upon the three principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. All sentient beings will become a Buddha. Some beings already have renunciation. Some beings already have bodhicitta, but haven't seen emptiness. Some have seen all of those things and have realized all of those things, but still have some bodhisattva grounds to traverse. Imagine that you bring each and every one of those sentient beings here so that they can hear exactly what they need to do, exactly what they need to hear in order to evolve to the state of Buddhahood the same way that you will. We know that all sentient beings are equally important. Imagine that you bring all hell beings, all hungry ghosts, all animals, all humans, all demigods, all gods here to be able to experience this teaching, to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, analysis, and meditation so that they can engage in the three highest higher trainings that's driven by this desire to definitely emerge of renunciation and couple it with this bodhicitta, the mind that wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings day and night, and eventually get rid of the afflictive obstructions through the first 7 bodhisattva grounds and the obstructions to omniscience, traversing those last 3 pure bodhisattva grounds. So imagine that all beings who need to traverse any among those pathways, and even beings who are in the lowest hell realm, who have so much more to evolve, so much more mental maturation to go, imagine that they are all here and that you're leading them in this practice. It's so important that we recognize that we're doing everything that we do for the sake of all sentient beings, to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. This should be like our mantra. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I want to be free from my suffering. I want to be free from the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, the 3 types of suffering, and all sentient beings likewise want to be free from all those types of sufferings. I want to have 100% happiness. All sentient beings want to have 100% happiness. And it's for that reason that I'm going to become a Buddha, to be able to achieve the state of 100% happiness and freedom from suffering for myself, but also be able to be the most reliable guide in the universe and be able to show all sentient beings that I've loved equally at some point in time since beginningless time, how to evolve themselves. So imagine that you now have the courage. Imagine that you're that bodhisattva that will teach in every single sentient being in the universe. Imagine that you're the Buddha that will know exactly how to teach every single sentient being in the universe. And that even if it's in a contrived way, you bring them all here because you love them all, meaning that you want them to have happiness and the causes of happiness, and you have compassion for all of them, meaning that you want them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. You've developed this extraordinary attitude that says, I will take on myself the task of freeing them all from suffering and the causes of suffering and bring them to a state of happiness where there's only bliss. And then that recognition gives rise to this identification of our handicap and a recognition that we have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience right now. We must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And in order to become a Buddha, we must create the causes and conditions. We must act as if first so that we can become one. So we start to act as if, we start to, as they say, fake it until you make it, because we will all make it, but we have to condition our minds to be so different than our minds are right now. Our minds are so self-centered right now and would, step over even our friends if we needed something so badly for us. And we have to pry that kind of thinking out of our minds and dispose of it like the garbage of it that it is. Dispose of the self-cherishing attitude like the empty beggar that comes to us that we think has a full handful of things to offer for us. We have to see the self-cherishing attitude for what it is. And in order to do that, we have to condition our minds with making them bigger and bigger and bigger and loving more and having more compassion. And eventually we will actually only love and only have compassion. So now with this in mind, all beings that exist are here, everyone with a consciousness, people who've evolved consciousness, who no longer have afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience, and those beings who are still learning, those beings who are still training, who still have some afflictive obstructions, or still have obstructions to omniscience, or still have a lot of both, like me. Now we're all here Now imagine, again, Buddha Shakyamuni in the center of this merit field is so pleased with everything that's going on. And now we will recite in praise of Buddha Shakyamuni. And this morning at the Nalanda course, both the Bodhicitta vow ceremony and the Nalanda course, this was read, praise of Buddha Shakyamuni. And the advice that was given is to not only reading this, so Buddha Shakyamuni is happy with us. That's not the reasoning behind doing this. So we really, impress the Buddha. We're reading this because we will become a Buddha, and we're seeing, okay, when we go for refuge, we identify the Buddha as the most reliable guide in the universe. Why is the Buddha the most reliable guide in the universe? Why is the Buddha the only being we identify as good enough for us in our ultimate goals? What does the Buddha have? What is great about the Buddha? What qualities do we have that are like the Buddha? What qualities don't we have that the Buddha has? The way that we identify what those qualities are is by reading things like Praise to Buddha Shakyamuni, by seeing these qualities that the Buddha has, and by seeing parts of the Buddha's life story, and seeing that these qualities will be qualities that we will have. So when we're praising Buddha Shakyamuni, we're praising our future qualities. We're praising it, telling our minds that this is what's good. This is what's worthy of praise. Money, houses, all these material things, that's not what is worthy of praise. The qualities that the Buddha has are the qualities that are worthy of praise. And when I tell my mind that, my mind starts to want those qualities more. So I use this as a gauge. How much like a Buddha am I? And then I use the other teaching on Buddha nature to not be discouraged, to say that, well, I will, okay, if I'm not like this, I will become like this, but it's going to require effort. What's the effort? The teachings for beings of three capacities, the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. Understand there are teachings for beings of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics, their individual characteristics. Lord Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, that Rinpoche is so kindly shared with us almost every single teaching. So how do we get the qualities that are presented here that the Buddha has that we're praising? By engaging in that stanza just presented, that Rinpoche presented so many times. Understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. The teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, the pathways for beings of small capacities that lead to the higher realms, the pathways for beings of medium capacity that lead to abiding nirvanas, and the pathways for beings of great capacity that lead to complete Buddhahood. And all of them will be necessary for us to practice in order for us to achieve that final goal of Buddhahood, because the teachings for beings of great capacity don't start until we get bodhicitta, and we aren't really a medium scope practitioner until we have renunciation, and we aren't a small scope practitioner until we don't have attachment to this life. So we see how strong of realizations we have to get, but we know they are realizations that can be achieved because a being with a mental consciousness just like ours did it. So this is what we think about. Praise to Buddha Shakyamuni. And after we do the praise to Buddha Shakyamuni, since it's Saka Dawa, we're going to do 108 Buddha Shakyamuni mantras. And I'll give the transmission of the Buddha Shakyamuni mantra. Rinpoche gave it to me. I received it from Dalai Lama too, I believe, but definitely from Khenser Geshe Wandak. So we'll do 108 of those mantras. We're going to do a lot of merit gathering and reciting today. Because I want to get the most merit possible. And I figure the words of the Buddha or the words of Tsongkhapa would be the best way for noises to come out of my mouth that I would like to have me accumulate as much virtue as possible. So this is what I'd like to do today. Praise to Buddha Shakyamuni. Sorry, we don't have it for screen share. We will in the future. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom, ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With a supreme sign, space like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparable wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the Tathagata, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the path, the one path of sublime, pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the Sangha, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditions, things such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. And here's a note. To reap the maximum benefit from reading this text, take note of the precise qualities on the basis of which the 3 jewels and the Buddha in particular are praised. Check within yourself to see if you have some of these qualities, and if you have them, rejoice and nurture them further. If you feel that some of these qualities are missing in you, don't be despondent. Rather, knowing that these are the qualities that you need to inculcate, and having the conviction that you too have the Buddha nature, which has the complete ability to manifest these qualities, be inspired to cultivate them. Once cultivated, again, see how you can nurture them further so you keep moving forward on the journey to your perfect happiness. This is how we should be reading this text. So wonderful. I don't know if Geshe Dorje Damdula wrote that note, or the Padmakara translation group wrote that note. It's because it just says translated from Tibetan and English by the Padmakara translation group. So very wonderful to help us, to aid us in understanding how to practice. Because I think it's missing so much. I think so many practitioners, or I don't know, Dharma students, we say, come to centers and just amass information. And it's just this information that you tinker around with in your head. And 10 years, 20 years pass, and I've heard people say, well, we never really were taught meditation. And I don't know. I don't know. So this is stuff that we need to actually, we're going to do King of Aspiration prayers next. I don't know if we have screen sharing ability.
Can you enable screen share, please?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Someday I'll actually do it right in the beginning. There, I did it. So we're going to now, again, imagining the merit field, Buddha Shakyamuni in the center. All the Gurus, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas around, imagining now all sentient beings are here as your guests, that you're leading in this King of Aspiration prayers. We're just going to do the beginning, the 7-limb prayer, and in making this prayer. This is from the sutra, of course, the Avatamsaka Sutra. So also auspicious to read a part of a sutra, as we will read the Heart Sutra also, maybe right before the Heart Sutra, just read the 12 pronouncements of Buddha in Sarna. We're packing it in. It's Saka Dawa, folks. I got to watch the time, though. I will be mindful of the time. So we probably won't get to much of the Lamrim Chemo today. I apologize, but I don't think you've heard much that wasn't in the Lamrim Chemo today. So everybody knows my cheat sheet. It's no secret. How are we doing? Okay, so
slight technical glitch, just move on. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the King of Aspiration prayers is the Samantabhadra's Aspiration to Good Actions. It's from the Ganda Vyuhas chapter of the Tamsaka Sutra. Wonderful. I see the prayer. Thank you so much, Lorinda, for sharing. So in the language of India, Arya, Bhadra, Charya, Brahma, Dana, Raja, and we see that even in the Tibetan text at the beginning, the title of the text is always presented in Sanskrit, because it is said that the Buddhas will teach in Sanskrit, or that the Buddhas teach the Dharma in Sanskrit, and that it connects our minds to the Sanskrit. So it's interesting, even in Tibetan text, it says in the language of India, and then it says in the language of Tibet. So this is something that's very common, to be able to connect with that original language, that I understand historically there's a debate about the original language that Buddha spoke and taught in, and so forth. But we know that the technical language, and that the Tanjur, and then eventually in the Kanjur, was presented in the Sanskrit and Pali. So we have it in our tradition in the Sanskrit, and we have all of the different teachings presented. So it's considered very auspicious to say the title in Sanskrit, because the source material is all written in Sanskrit. All of the Nalanda Pandits and so forth, all of these commentaries are all written in Sanskrit. In the language of India, Arya, Bhadra, Charya, Brahma, Dana, Raja. In the language of Tibet. So now we're, as Westerners, Americans, we're all over the world now in different applications, but wherever you are, we're trying to connect also to the language of Tibet, to leave imprints because we know that there's, incredible, untainted, pure Dharma in the Tibetan language, more so than in the English language at this point. So if we could know the Tibetan language, we would know more and have the ability to know more Dharma at this point, because it's not all in English. So let's connect it to the Tibetan language now. In the language of Tibet, Papa, Zampo, Jupe, Molan, Jijelpo. In the English language, the King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions. Homage to Manjushri, the youthful, to all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race in all directions of the universe, through past and present and future. To every single one of you, I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear vivid before my mind. And I multiply my body as many times as atoms is in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to all the Buddhas. In every atom presides as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them all their Bodhisattva heirs. And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality, saluting them with an endless ocean of praise. With the sounds of an ocean of different melodies, I sing the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all those who have gone to perfect bliss. To every Buddha I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, of beautiful garlands, of music and perfumed ointments, the best of paracels, the brightest lamps and finest incense. To every Buddha I make offerings, exquisite garments in the most fragrant scents, powdered incense heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry, then the vast and unsurpassable offerings inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas and moved by the power of my faith in good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. Whatever negative acts I've committed while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance, with my body, my speech, and also with my mind before you, I confess and purify each and every one. With a heart full of delight, I rejoice in all the merits of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, those in training, and the Arhats behind training, and every living being throughout the entire universe. You are like beacons of light shining throughout the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all attachment. I exhort you, all of you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. Joining my palms together, I pray to you who intend to pass into Nirvana, remain for eons as many as the atoms in this world, and bring well-being and happiness to all living beings. What little virtue I have gathered through my homage, through offering, confession, and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it, I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. Now we'll recite Buddha Shakyamuni's mantra. I'm imagining you're being blessed by Buddha Shakyamuni. If you have the initiation, you can do self-generation. If you don't have the initiation, just imagining Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation, merit field, front generation, getting blessed, your body, speech, and mind being blessed, obstacles being removed. You can imagine obstacles are being removed for your loved ones. Imagine all obstacles are being removed for you to being able to meet with teachers, obstacles that your teachers could have being removed. Imagine that all the obstacles to Jeffrey Hopkins' health are being removed. with these mantras of Buddha Shakyamuni. We see now Buddha Shakyamuni's mantra on the screen, good work. And I will, again, I won't say much more, but homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, who was so kind to come into our world and present this information to us that actually works. So many people are trying to sell us and convince us of information that is accurate. And then when we come to actually practice it, it doesn't produce what it says it's going to. Or when we come to actually use the product they're selling, it doesn't finally do what it says it's going to do, or it runs out, or it doesn't satisfy us completely. But this information is information that is presented to us that actually works, that will actually allow you to achieve your own individual realizations, that will convince you that it works. You don't have to take the Buddha's word for it. If you engage in these practices, your mind will start to become more and more like a renunciate, more and more like a bodhisattva, more and more like a Buddha, and eventually will become the mind of a Buddha, where there is no afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience. So homage to this great being, Buddha Shakyamuni, and this is his name mantra. So I'll give the transmission. Teata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Ye Soha. 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 Om Mani Mani Ma Mani Soa, Deata Om Mani Mani Ma Mani Soa, Deata Om Mani Mani Ma Soa, Deata Om Mani Mani Ma Mani 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 Soa, Teata Om Mani Mani Ma Mani Soa. Teata Om Mani Mani Ma Mani Soa. Teata Om Mani Mani Ma Mani Soa. Dead Om Muni Muni Mamuni as all, 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 dead Om Muni Muni Mahamuni is all, dead Om Muni Muni Mamuni 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 is all, Deada Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Ezo. This is the superior truth of suffering. This is the superior truth of origin. This is the superior truth of cessation. This is the superior truth of path. The suffering is to be identified. Origin is to be abandoned. Cessation is to be achieved. Path is to be meditated upon. There is no cessation to identify. There is no origin to abandon. There is no suffering to identify. There is no origin to abandon. There is no cessation to achieve, and there is no path to meditate upon. These are the 12 pronouncements that Buddha made at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. This is the superior truth of suffering. This is the superior truth of origin. This is the superior truth of cessation. This is the superior truth of path. Suffering is to be identified. Origin is to be abandoned. Cessation is to be achieved. And path is to be meditated upon. There is no suffering to identify. There is no origin to abandon. There is no cessation to achieve. And there is no path to meditate upon. Now we'll read the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. We just covered the first turning of the Wheel of Dharma. Now we will cover the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma and read the Heart Sutra. Thank you, Buddha Shakyamuni, so much. And thank you, Khenser Geshe Wandak, for making it possible for us to know what the heck Buddha Shakyamuni was talking about. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One, the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness is there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. We'll say it 5 times. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. 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 Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube necho tamba ne nguje duchu ngayi du dojen druba bola ma yi bujinzi Nezon Gandrozo La Shatzelo. I prostrate to the gatherings of the Dakinis and the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like a mother looks after her child. Agasamara Jasandara Samara Yabe Agasamara Jasandara Samara Bikas. Aga Samara Jasandara Samara Yabe Deata Ongate Gate Paragate Parazangate Buddhizoha. By the truth of the existence of the three jewels, may all inner and outer hindrances and adversities be overcome. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. May they be completely pacified. May all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from all adverse conditions to the Dharma, and may we obtain all circumstances conducive to the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness, happiness, and well-being right here, right now. Baba Gonja Zonji Gai Dembe Doji She, Lobo Doji, Mepo Doji, Shewa Doji, Dragi Baji Medu Bejan Daji Shedin Gori Zoa, Geri and Donja She Wadan, Medon Nube Jandanda Wadan, Tumba Dunji, Bonzon Zonjoji, Daji De Jandenda de Lejo. And again, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma and Vaishali. 10th ground Bodhisattvas get up and ask Buddha a series of questions. And this is where we find the teachings on Buddha nature, and we find the teachings of the Chitta Mantra school and so forth. So we don't have time to read something from that, but we find Sutra Unraveling Thought and some other texts that we would find into that category. So in Asanga's works, we find many, many works in that lineage of tradition, in Maitreya's works. Now we'll make a mandala offering, just as an offering to the merit field, the request for teaching. I know we've already talked a lot, but just let's make this beautiful offering of a beautiful, perfect world. Everybody is just in a perfect position. All the stress and fears, everything isn't there, because all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want is for us to have complete bliss, complete freedom from suffering. And imagine we're offering this just beautiful place with perfect beings enjoying this pure world in it. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sanje Jadanza Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sonanje Drola Benja Sanje Drubasho Sanje Jadanza Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sonanje Drola Benja Sanje Drubasho Sanje Jadanza Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sonanje Drola Benja Sanje Drubasho. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. There is grasping, you do not have the view. So usually from here, we would talk about Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And I just want to say before we end the class that I feel so fortunate, and I say this over and over again, and I really, really mean it, to have met Khensa Rinpoche and to have had him teach so many incredible things to me, to us, and for so many years, not just for a year or two, or just coming through town a couple times a year, where we could get an introduction to Buddhism teaching, or maybe have some cursory outsiders look at the view. Rinpoche stayed with us for decades, stayed in my life for 25 years and continued to teach one thing. Understand that there are persons of three capacities: small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. And 25 years later, I have some kind of an idea what that stanza means. And I have this ability, because of the kindness of Rinpoche, to maybe talk about that stanza for as long and as many hours as anyone could bear. And it's because of Rinpoche's kindness, and because he wasn't satisfied with partial instructions, and he wouldn't allow me to be. And he just said over and over again, Jeff, you've got to know this. You've got to understand logic and reasoning. You have to know this more thoroughly. You won't get realizations. You won't be able to have this stuff mean anything more than information if you don't delve into it so thoroughly. And he always felt so sad when others weren't really delving into it, where they were just maybe doing some pujas and they really didn't understand the information, or were just getting some general teachings, having whoever roll into town and being satisfied with hearing whatever they had to say, and not understanding the systematic, the integrated path, the way that he so kindly shared with us. And I think that all of you, the ones that I can see on the screen, could really put the stages of the path together, if you had to give a talk on it in a way that would make sense, that would be in the right order. And that's because of Rinpoche's kindness. And I just want to say thank you for gathering with me here. I know that many of you I'm talking to were at all the teachings I was at. And I really appreciate you coming to hear me talk about it, because it helps me gather more understanding. It forces me to keep going, and it allows me to fulfill the wishes of Rinpoche, which was for me to continue his teachings. So thank you. I couldn't fulfill Rinpoche's wishes if you don't show up. And he was so adamant that I do this. And I remember when he passed, feeling like, oh, now I've got to do this. And, starting to try to figure it out and put it on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and trying to figure it all out. And because you're here, because you've been receptive to me talking, it allows me to keep talking, and it allows me to gather that merit that Lama Tsongkhapa talks about in the abbreviated stages. That is really an amazing, huge merit that comes from being able to discuss this information. So thank you. You're allowing me to get to Buddhahood quicker because you listen. So it's dependent origination. I depend on you wholly at this point to gather this merit of teaching. And I just want to say, this doesn't pass me. I don't feel like I'm doing everyone this great favor. I feel like you're doing that for me by continuing to listen. And when I see one person even pop, that's fine. Rinpoche, I remember there was only 5 people, and Geshe Aga was actually there. And Rinpoche, we were like, oh, I'm so sorry, Rinpoche, there were only 5 students here. With Geshe Aga, I think it made 6. I forget the exact. But the point being, Rinpoche said, well, we actually, if you count Buddha's first teaching, there were only 5 students, and we have 6. So we have more students here than Buddha Shakyamuni. And I always remembered that. And he never, ever, he would always teach no matter what. One person would show up, he'd give the teaching as if there were 100 people there. And I've seen him give teachings to 400 people. We had pictures of him giving teachings in Tibet to 30,000 people. But he would, if one person was there, he'd be more than happy to share the Dharma. I could get him to talk for hours and hours, just 1 or 2 questions, just more than willing to share the Dharma. So what a great example. And the only reason that we can all be here today doing this is because of the kindness of Khensur Rinpoche and the kindness of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who had the broad vision to splatter the world with the Dharma when he left to Tibet. So we're really, really so fortunate. We did the concluding mandala offering. Any mistakes that I made, I apologize to them. They were unintentional. May they be purified by this Vajrasattva mantra after we recite the prayer for flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. I heard the little voice, so those of you who've been on know the joke. Nejing Oracle suggested we read this, so whenever I go to not read it, I feel like Good doing something wrong. Through these, the Father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketu, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity and destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark, fading, and fog, his pure conduct practiced according to the conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating it all for beings in doctrine, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures definitive and interpretive were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he lied without clash. In the good paths of sutra and tantra, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness, explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by a method, the effect vehicle, hard essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of the power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. And any mistakes may I have made, may they be purified by this mantra. Imagine your body, speech, and mind is purified with white, red, and blue nectar rays coming from Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from your root guru, and imagining that white rays and nectar coming down on you and transforming into white ohms and purifying yours and all sentient beings' body. Red light rays and nectars are transforming into red ahs, purifying yours and all sentient beings' speech, and blue light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and purifying yours and all sentient beings' minds. Om benzo sato samaya manubalaya benzo sato zeno vajija dida me baba sutokaya me baba supokaya me baba anuratu me baba savasiti me pracha savakama sucha me kitam shriyan kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan savatatakata benzo mame mukha benzo baba maha samaya sapa a hom ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lamo. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalaraja Mo Rama Ajudaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hung Jo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the Hero Manjushri, and likewise Samanta Bhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Now, prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Chenrezig Buddha, who lives in our world, as I heard this morning, breathes the same air we breathe, walks on the same earth we walk. We're so fortunate to have a fully enlightened being, Chenrezig Buddha, here with us, still teaching and still really caring so much that we know the truth of the Dharma and presenting the Nalanda Master's works with such clarity. In the pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara. Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Gangri Rawe Korwe Yin Yandi Pendam Dewa Malu Zhongwe Ne Chenreze Wan Denzin Yadzoi Shabezire Vadu Enyo prayer of supplication to Namgyel Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our root guru, my root guru. And this was composed on March 6, 2023 by myself and completed a year after Rinpoche's, on the anniversary of the year of Rinpoche passing. Such a hard year and so hard to be separated from Rinpoche, but we have his teachings. And as Geshe Aga said, when we think about the teachings he gave, and when I think about them, and when I actually give the teachings, he feels just fresh, feels just right here with me, even in physical presence, feels so close. And I know the Dharmakaya is always connected to us so closely. Complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om Ah Hum. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar from our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands as spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sorry I went over a little bit. Please practice as much as you can today. It's the day of increase. And we did this Om Sambhara, the mantra of increase. So we should be good to go until sunrise or something. I don't know. I don't know how it all works, in terms of the elements and the systems, but we should be good to go. We did a lot of Buddha Shakyamuni today, and I feel good about today. I hope you do too. And thank you. We'll see you next time. See you Thursday, 7:30, Bodhicitta class. We can learn more about how to become Buddhas and how to emulate Buddhas to become, how to emulate Bodhisattvas to become one.